You are listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after productivity coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives entrepreneurs the straight talk on personal productivity. No BS fluff or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today is episode 285, Practicing Emotional Intelligence to Show Up Your Best with Joshua Freedman. If you're a business owner who wants to learn effective business strategies, improve time management, and elevate productivity to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. I'm looking forward to bringing this conversation to you because you get to meet our guest, Joshua Freedman. To say this was an amazing experience to be the host and the interviewer is an understatement. I really think you're in for a treat on this episode. Joshua Freedman is one of the world's top experts on using emotional intelligence to improve performance. He's the co-founder and CEO of 6 Seconds, the global nonprofit dedicated to teaching people how to use emotional intelligence. Joshua leads the world's largest study of emotional intelligence, with breaking research dropping later this year. He is also the author of 5 emotional intelligence books, including the best-selling At the Heart of Leadership: How to Get Results with Emotional Intelligence. He has helped hundreds of organizations, including FedEx, the U.S. Navy, P&G, Microsoft, Intel, Amazon, HSBC, and United Nations, use emotional intelligence to get better results. His work leads to a people-centered culture that strengthens leadership, sales, employee well-being, retention, and innovation. When listening in on my conversation with Joshua, you will discover exactly what is emotional intelligence. Why is it important to practice it in business? How to work through your feelings and show up your best? What happens when you ignore your feelings? The observer state that can transform work conflicts. How to be compassionate but still advocate for the business. When it's necessary to pause versus press on, and so much more. And now, let's meet our guest and get to the straight talk. Welcome to Productivity Straight Talk, Joshua. How are you today?
I am fantastic and delighted to be here.
Oh, that's great. And I'm really looking forward to chatting with you today about emotional intelligence. Before we get into that, I would love to hear a little bit about you, what we didn't learn in your official bio, and why is emotional intelligence your favorite topic? Like, how did that become to be that this is why I get to talk to you today?
Yeah, I think the honest answer is I wasn't very good at it and I needed to learn it. And learning it has been an incredibly powerful experience for me. And it just made me want to learn more.
Yeah, and share it with the world, I guess, if you got good results with it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I started 3 companies before I was 20, and all of them failed in large part because I sucked as a leader. And I was good at the tasks, but I was not good at leading. And I'm sure every person who's listening kind of relates to this tension between moving from being a solopreneur and like good at a thing,
to
building up, even just going to 2 or 3, that's a huge change to go from yourself to 3 people to 5 people. And I failed and I failed. And then I learned some things that I needed to learn.
Oh, this is going to be great. I do hear that often. I hear different versions of like, I woke up one day and like, how did this happen? I was a business owner and like I'm leading people, right? Like this isn't what you expect. And generally in small businesses, our businesses are an extension of some sort of passion or skill set or something we went to school for, but not always the side of leading people and, like you said, emotional intelligence. So I would love to know, how did you connect the dots of like failure one, failure two, failure three? And then you were like, straight to like it was emotional intelligence. I could imagine it wasn't as
No,
direct of a line to that. So how did
no,
you
it
get?
was it was a kind of 10-year sort of I spent some time I became a teacher for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and I just serendipitously ended up in this school where emotional intelligence was really central. I got out of college. I was sort of in the long route, but in my mid 20s, finished up with college. And then my wife was going to graduate school. So I'm like, oh, well, I'll teach for a while while I figure out what I want to be when I grow up.
Right.
Uh, and there was this program in the school about emotional intelligence. And when I first saw it, I'm like, oh, that's not for me. But the kids had more skills in this than I did. And it just started making me like wondering, how is it they're so good
Mm,
at talking about their feelings and their
yeah.
experiences? And anyway, it was I thought it was a sort of detour in my life, and it turned out to be the on ramp to something.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I don't know what school that was, but I have had different conversations about emotional intelligence over the 5+ years on this podcast. And one of the things that always comes up is that it to me, it's just not taught enough. It's not accessible enough. You know, I have a 13-year-old son, and I wish that that was the focus in his school. It is definitely the focus in our home.
Mm.
But if we could have that also mirrored in the schools more, I think it would just serve our kids and the next generation so much. You know, not my generation per se. Actually, yes, my generation. My husband and I always say, like, to our son, like, you know, our parents never said, like, how do you feel about this?
Mm.
Or what was a better choice? And like, how could you have managed yourself and your emotions in that situation? Like, those are common conversations. And those conversations weren't being had, you know, with myself or my husband when we were kids.
Yeah, I wrote a book called Wholehearted Parenting about my own journey to realize I really wanted to be a different kind of parent than my parents were,
Yeah.
especially a different kind of dad. Well, I'll tell you, we now at 6 Seconds, the organization that I run, we have programs, everything from like free 1 hour intros that we run all the time through to a doctoral level program in emotional intelligence. And the doctorate is on emotional intelligence in education. And so, I mean, I'm not an academic, but I'm part of this doctoral education program, working with these people on the, being scholar practitioners on bringing this robustly into education. Most of my work is in business and mostly in large organizations, but I do get to work with some small businesses too, and a lot of the people I work with are also solopreneurs or people who are developing a small specialty practice,
Mm-hmm.
consulting and coaching, and working with other organizations and teams and companies to help them be better.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a very eclectic mix, which is very fun and also challenging from a business perspective.
Right. I mean, that's touching a lot of different areas. You know, when I was doing a little bit of research on you, preparing for this interview, I saw that you guys were asking, you know, what would it be like if was it a billion people had emotional intelligence or improved emotional intelligence? That's the question your organization is asking. And I'd assume in pursuit of that, that's why you're going from everything from doctorate to small business owner organization in teaching this.
Yeah, we're a nonprofit, and we are kind of unusual in that almost all our revenue comes through our products and services and our work with corporations, for example. And then we use that to subsidize the work that we do in 200 countries and territories, and projects like our partnership with UNICEF World Children's Day, where we're making these resources available for free all over the world. But I think that part of, for me, the realization our mission is about the common ground. Our mission is about what makes us really human.
Mm-hmm.
And well, in a way, it'd be easier from a business perspective, it'd be way easier to focus on one space. That kind of undermines our mission because we're trying to say, well, where, as parents, as humans, as citizens, as students, as civic leaders, as business leaders, as, where is the kind of shared story of how do we be better as people, as a world? How do we shape a better future for all of us? And I think if we really want to hold that broad lens, we need to have space for all of us to do this work.
Absolutely. I realize that you and I jumped into this because it's a very interesting topic to me and it's your specialty. But maybe our listeners are jumping into this
What are you
conversation.
people talking about?
And they're like, great story, but like, come on here. What are we talking about? So maybe we should just pause really quick. And can you, in your own words, describe like what emotional intelligence is and why it's so important, just to connect those dots for all of our listeners today?
So in simple terms, emotional intelligence is being smarter with feelings. We all have feelings. They're there. Our employees have them. Our customers have them. And they're part of our basic human biology.
Mm-hmm.
And so, sometimes you'll hear people say like, well, let's make a good decision and just be rational. Okay, that's completely irrational. Because the human brain, emotions have a central function to tell us what's safe, what's important, what to prioritize. And so emotions are a part of every decision we make, every action we take. And if we aren't intelligent about that, we just kind of let it happen as it happens, we end up doing kind of dumb things about, we make less good decisions. We make less good investments. We make less good hires. We make less good deals. And we don't build organizations that are really effective.
Yeah.
And so, in all areas of our life, I mean, as a parent of a 13-year-old, you're right in it. Like every day, there's like all of this like emotion is really visible.
Yes.
And I think for a lot of business owners right now, in the last few years, it's been horrible to be, for most of us, to be running businesses in the last few years. There's been a lot of challenging emotions, and I don't think that's going away. How do we navigate all that complexity?
Yeah.
And given the reality that the emotions are there, either we're going to get better with them or we're going to be in deeper, deeper, deeper trouble.
Absolutely. There's understanding our own emotions, which can be work in itself, right? But we don't live in a silo. We have clients, we have vendors, we have team members, we have like just the essence of being a business owner means that you are interacting with someone else's emotions. Someone else could possibly be, affecting how you feel that day.
Sometimes I've said to myself, this job would be a lot easier if I didn't have employees or customers.
Yeah. And you're not the only one that has said that. I've had clients verbatim quote that same exact thing. Is like,
none of my employees or customers are listening.
Yeah. And you're like, did I just say that out loud? That would mean I was out of business. Right. So obviously that's not going to happen. We have employees, we have team members, we have clients, and we have ourselves, which is a lot sometimes to emotionally regulate. And when I think of productivity and the intersection of emotional intelligence, I can give some examples is just imagine how many times you've woken up and said, I don't feel like doing that. Mm-hmm. Is it avoidance? Is it fear? There's so many emotions that you may or may not be addressing that is affecting your action or inaction, and often inaction. And so can you speak to that a bit about us, regulating or learning to use our emotions better for getting more done in our businesses?
So I'll give you a kind of opposite case, which I suspect many of you all listening have experienced. I have this pattern, which is when I'm tired, I should take a break. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of push on. And I have these times where I'm sitting at the computer and I'm just getting nothing done. And I'm like, come on, push. Come on, you got to do it. Come on, you got to do it. And I find it fascinating, like how totally unproductive that is. and how it undermines my productivity the next day as well. So like, let's break that down. Like, what's going on there? And for me, there's this kind of voice in my head of should.
Mm-hmm.
There's this satisfaction of like checking it off and getting it done. And then there's this piece of myself, which is kind of self-blame or, I don't know, lack of self-compassion of like, why aren't you better? Why aren't you, you have to. And so there's this kind of stew that I'm in that moment. And even though I know, and even though I do this work, I still find myself sometimes in that place. And when I'm in that place, it's really hard for me to see that I have any choices.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to pause and say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Step one, what's going on? Step
Be the
two,
observer.
Yeah. Step two, do I have options?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, whether it's, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to stop doing this, or, whatever, if we can get into that moment of saying, oh, wait a minute, I have options here. And then which of these options moves me towards what I really want? And one of the things that we work on in the 6 Seconds model of emotional intelligence is a competence that we call pursuing noble goals. And that's about looking at what you're really trying to do in the world, who you really want to be. What is your legacy? What is your purpose? Not just in your business, not just in your role, but of course, as a small business owner, your sense of purpose is going to be deeply tied into what you're doing. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing that, most of you. And yet, it's not just in the workplace. It's also in the grocery store line. It's in your family. It's in your church, synagogue, mosque, temple, walking on the beach, wherever your place of spiritual renewal is. All of these different domains. Who do you really want to be? Who are you really? What are you trying to contribute in the world? Mm-hmm. And what I've found is that when I can tap into that, that gives me a lever to move out of this stuck place.
Yeah. You're taking yourself from the moment and like short term to looking further long term, and like what is the best choice if you're looking at the long term, which is often very different than we're short term, like just get that thing off our list, just get pushed through this one thing.
And that becomes an incredibly powerful tool for prioritizing. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about being productive, it is not useful to be productive on the wrong things.
That's right. In fact, I would call that not productive at all.
BS things, but it gets me nowhere.
Exactly. That's such a great example. And as you were sharing that example, what I was thinking about is how, the last several years I've been really practicing this, and it's something so different than my normal personality, but it's like, if I'm tired, I would push through. Mm-hmm. Not just at work, just like in general in life, like it's just like there's no time for that, like suck it up, push through. Mm-hmm. And it's been several years that I've recognized that didn't make me a very nice wife or a good mom. Because when I'm tired, I'm irritable, I'm short, I don't regulate my emotions as well. They feel like they're just flooding into me. And so when I made that connection, it was less about saying, okay, how can I more like control emotions, but like, how can I choose a behavior that allows me to feel more empowered with my emotions? And that was definitely rest. It was whether it was naps or it was changing my schedule for the day because of, feeling tired, but really tuning into what I needed so that the bigger goal for me, right, is like being the wife I want to be, being the mom I want to be. That supersedes even being the business owner I want to be, although very similar.
I wish we could just like ask everybody in the audience, raise your hand if you relate to that, because I think what we would see is a lot of hands right now.
Yeah.
The research on burnout is like a lot of us are really fried, and we know we're not at our best. Mm-hmm. And yet, like the conditions, the economic conditions, the social conditions, they seem so fraught. And we're just like, I gotta figure it, I gotta push through. And like, I don't know, like how many years can we do that? and sacrificing little bits of ourselves.
Yeah.
And then kind of going, wait a minute, there's not a lot left here.
Yeah.
Think about this, this when you have an old cell phone and you plug it in and you charge it all night, you get up in the morning 100%, and then, by 10 a.m., it's like 25%. Like that is not a place of real productivity.
Right. What a great example. Yes. I want to be a new phone. I want to be charged all day.
And would that it be so easy as just going and ordering one?
Yeah. Yes. Battery replacement needed. No. Yes. But you're so right. As like we do these little steps that get us like maybe it's to 10:05 or 10:30, but is it what we've identified? What do we really need to do that recharging?
And this is a key piece that you said that I want to just reiterate. Sometimes we think there's a conflict between like taking care of ourselves and taking care of our people and productivity. And I think I certainly have experienced that where I'm like, the push through or the little tape that runs in my head that I just kind of despise is man up. It's like actually human up, first of all. And second of all, like,
yes,
let's go for the long haul. Let's go. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And what is really important here, getting great results is not about today, right? It's about many, many days. And what are we building and what are we contributing to and how are we bringing people together, clients, colleagues, partners, vendors, employees, contractors, stakeholders, community members, friends, allies. How do we get together so that energy is moving towards the goal that's important, our shared goal? And if we're in that fried place, sure, some days we do just have to tough it out. But if we're in that place day after day after day, that is a message from us to us saying it's time for a new battery. It's time to reset.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that we could both agree while we just met, want to say like they deserve a new battery. I think we could both agree on that is that they may be hearing you and I talking about this, and then someone can be listening and easily say, yeah, but not for me. So I want to speak to each of your hearts right now and say like, no, for you, like if you've tuned in today, I think it was for a reason. And if you need a new battery, like this is what I believe each of you deserve. It actually hurts my heart. It's why I got into what I got into over a decade ago of productivity. And while you and I went about it in different paths, it's that I was seeing business owners completely burned out and fried that were talented, that had something to offer the world. And I felt that I had a skill set that said, hey, if I could teach these skills, if I could talk about this aspect of how we get to show up in our businesses, then more people will enjoy entrepreneurship. More people would get to serve the world in their own special way. And to do that, it might require a new battery.
Entrepreneurship is really hard work. And, I run a big LinkedIn group and I moderate all the posts that come into the group, which is a little bit insane, but it's usually that's my like 11 p.m. task is to go through and like, there are a lot of posts that are like, just press on, just keep going. I'm like, no, don't do that. Like think, tune in, decide when it's time to just press on and when it's time to make a change.
Yeah.
And just be smarter about your own energy, be smarter about how you're spending your life and the life of your employees and colleagues and, and family. And just like, I think that's where the really big decisions are. Like, how do I know, is this a time to just press through or is this a time to pause and redirect? Do I pivot again?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's about asking good questions. And you had said something just about like observing, or I use the word observing in my own journey of emotional intelligence and just personal growth. I remember when I actually found out you could be the observer of your emotions and not your emotions just taking over, right? Like I grew up thinking emotions just happen to you and then you were left to deal with them.
Same.
Like, yeah, right? Like just like a tidal wave of like, I didn't opt into this. I'm a victim of whatever emotions would come up. And
I thought they were kind of random,
yeah,
It was just
right?
they would just come hit me.
And the moment I realized I could observe it and be neutral about it and then choose something different or choose how I react to those emotions, it was literally life-changing. And it was so nuanced. But I say that because I think that so many of us are still in reaction mode. So in our businesses, think an employer shows up late, an employee talks back, a vendor doesn't meet a promise they had for you. There are so many opportunities where something's going to happen.
So many opportunities.
Yeah, right? So many in a day. And then are you just like a victim to all whatever emotions that brings up? Or could you be the observer and choose? Because oftentimes when we just react, oh man, is that a time killer? It's an energy waster. I don't care what you had planned that day. You're in the midst of feeling whatever is coming. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely. And I would also apply that outward to others. So I think sometimes, particularly as the boss, there's this kind of sense like, oh, this is my responsibility. I have to fix it. Somebody's unhappy, somebody's mad at me, somebody's stomping their foot or crying or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think this exact same thing that you just described has been huge for me to say, okay, I can just acknowledge that's what's going on and I don't have to solve it. Gosh, it seems like this is really upsetting for you. You want to tell me more about it?
Right.
It looks like you're really mad about something. What's going on for you? And I don't have to solve it. I just can. It is being in that observer state. I can just be listening and noticing, going, okay, thank you for sharing that, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so often that just transforms what's going on.
And the person feels seen and heard. I think that having those good boundaries and trusting yourself that when you ask those questions, you don't feel like you're taking on those emotions. I often hear from some of my clients is like, as a small business, like, oh my gosh, like I have an employee and their dog just died and they're like crying and I feel that. And someone had a death in their family and someone's going through a divorce. Like you kind of know those things in such a small, intimate business. And so how do you have these like healthy business boundaries? Because you're friends, like you're friendly. It's you can't help but not to be when you're spending time with someone almost more than your significant other, right? If you're working 40 hours a week, you're with these people all day. So my question to you is, are there any strategies to say like, okay, I can empathize, like I care, but it doesn't need to affect me emotionally and my day or how I show up?
I think it does affect you emotionally. But I think the question is, what do you do next?
Okay, good.
Right?
Thank you for reframing that.
I think you're kind of a real jerk if somebody's in pain and that doesn't affect you emotionally.
You're totally right. I agree. Yes. Okay. I think you're 100% right, by the way. Totally misspoke. Thank you for that.
Okay, so you have this painful moment. And then what do you do next? And I think if you are saying, I've got to fix it, this is now like, this has become my problem or whatever, that's going to put you in a certain place. If you are like trying to deny it and you're kind of at war with yourself, I shouldn't feel this. Oh my gosh, how many times have clients said to me, well, I feel X, but I know I shouldn't. And I'm like, what if you should?
Yeah.
What if it's exactly the right feeling? Like, wait, what do you mean? Well, what if that feeling is just trying to help you notice something? What if it's just a message from you for you to say, hey, notice this? It's a question.
Interesting. Yeah. Curious instead of judgmental.
And when we shift our relationships with our own and others' emotions into that place that you described, that observing place, saying, oh, curious, this is telling something. Oh, what's going on here? What's this about? That shift takes us away from the idea of negative emotions And when something's painful, it's like, oh, there's something really beautiful there.
Mm.
Right. And I care about this person. And that caring is what fuels me to be a better everything.
Right. Yeah.
Better everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I was like going to fill in the blank for you. You're right. Like leader, human, like friend, whatever that role is, or roles. We often have several roles. It just allows you to be better. Yeah.
So at the same time, sometimes we have performance issues, right? And I tend to be really patient. I have a very long-term view of the work that I'm trying to do. And so if I have an employee that's going through a rough patch or whatever, my tendency is to say, look, as long as things aren't totally falling apart, I can be patient. As long as we're kind of moving in the right direction, I can be patient. At the same time, sometimes it's time for a break, and I said to an employee the other day, like, look, if you need to take some time off, it's a very reasonable idea. But I would rather have you just tell me and like make a choice. Don't be in this place of like, I'm trying to do this work and I can't really do it and I feel bad about it and I'm letting people down and I'm letting you down. Like, I would rather you just say, look, I need 3 months. I need a break. I need a month. I need whatever it is. And we have insurance for that in my business. So
okay.
I think that's really kind of takes off some of the pressure of like, if somebody needs to be on leave, they can do that. But it doesn't mean as we don't have responsibility to our bottom line and to our business. It doesn't mean we can kind of have ongoing low performance, but we can still be compassionate.
Yeah. Yeah. So still advocating for what the business needs and having the standards that you hold them to, but also being compassionate. And it is that like duality of like, how do I be the boss? Right. And protect the company. And then also, how do I be the person that cares about this employee and can help them, or I don't want to say help, acknowledge what they're going through.
I think it's one of the most difficult, interesting emotional intelligence puzzles of being a leader, and in any size organization. I mean, I was just working with an organization last week with like 300 employees. I often work with organizations with 300,000 employees, and the same challenge comes up over and over and over again. I want to be a caring, good person. I want to take care of the people around me, and I have a responsibility in my work.
Yeah.
And we have both of those things, and they sometimes feel like they're in conflict, but I think often they're not really in conflict. Like, what's going to be the best for the most?
That's a great question.
And if somebody's really in a place of struggling, like, what's going to be really best for them is often what's also best for the business. Whether that's to take a break or whether that's to say, okay, like, let's have time to grieve and move on, or maybe that's time to get some support. But I don't think we have to be jerks to be kind of realistic about our business.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's soft to be compassionate. I think it's smart. I think it's business smart, because we want to unleash the energy of people.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to switch gears a little bit now and go through another example that I often see. So I alluded to it earlier. We wake up, and I don't know about you, Joshua, but I don't wake up feeling the same way every single day. We have different emotions that appear each day. And so as we have different feelings, oftentimes that influences how we show up that day, what we do or don't do, right? Just in the work. Do you have any advice on us acknowledging and seeing and knowing what those feelings are and working through them so that we can still show up our best? Yeah, that's my question. I don't know if I asked it totally complete.
Super clear. There's two pieces that I would suggest. One is emotions are automatic, but that doesn't mean that that we don't have volition. So just for example, I suspect some days when you wake up and you're like, I just don't have I don't have the will to get out of bed. It's like, I suspect if you look back at yesterday and the day before, you'll notice some patterns about what you were doing and not doing, and setting yourself up. So it's kind of like, okay, it's a black box. It just happens by itself, these automatic reactions, but you are setting the conditions of the black box.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, emotions are automatic, but they're automatic in a context that we have created, or maybe not totally created. I mean, some of it is biology, some of it is external factors, what's going on in the market, what's going on with our customers, what's going on with our, kids' health, whatever. It's like there are external factors that affect us, but there's a lot we can do in the way we set ourselves up. So one of the things that I often ask people to think about is, like, what are the demands that you're going to be facing tomorrow or next week? The emotional challenges, like, imagine you are, going to be running a marathon tomorrow. Well, tomorrow is too soon. Let's imagine you're running a marathon in a month. Is there anything you're going to do differently, in the next few days, in the next few weeks to get ready for that? I would die if I was trying to run a marathon in a month, but like, I sure would start training tomorrow.
Right. You'll die less sooner.
Exactly. I'll make it a few more miles before I collapse. So that's one piece of it, is to kind of look at the conditions that we're setting up for ourselves. And that is, the normal stuff: diet, exercise, breaks that we take, ways that we're spending our time. Are we journaling? Are we talking to people? Are we doing the things that help us be whole and recover and have our energy? Who we're relating to, how we're relating. So that's the pre-work. Okay, now whatever pre-work we've done or not done, you wake up on, it's a Friday right now. You wake up on a Friday morning when we're recording this, and you've got certain things going on. One piece that I would recommend is that you remember you always have multiple feelings. And sometimes there's like a loud voice. And just like when you're in a meeting with a bunch of people and one person is really loud, it doesn't mean that person is right. Doesn't mean that's the smartest idea. It's a loud voice. Often it's that kind of quieter person in the back kind of going, well, I'm not sure. Maybe we should think about blah, blah, blah. That turns out to be the best insight. So what I would say is, the first thing is, if we just try to ignore the feelings, they often get louder. So just going, okay, yeah, all right. So I feel disappointed. I feel frustrated. I feel scared. I feel worried. I feel helpless. Whatever it is. Yeah, I see that. I wonder what that's about. That's interesting. All right, so now we've kind of listened to that. We've validated that. We weren't fighting against it. We're not saying I shouldn't feel that. Okay, you are. It is what it is. There's a metaphor that someone shared with me, which is like looking at clouds in the sky. You don't need to be attached to it. It's like, oh, there's a dragon, there's a butterfly, there's a rocket ship, there's a car. You're just sort of seeing the clouds go by. Yeah. That's interesting. Wonder what that is. And then my favorite coaching question, which you can borrow as a self-coaching question: what else are you feeling?
Who else is in the room?
Yeah,
for your analogy, right? Okay.
What are the other voices?
Yes.
Oh, you know what? I'm also curious about such and such, and I wonder how it's going with blah blah blah. And I'm hopeful about da 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 da, and I feel excited about da 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 da. And it's not that excitement is a better feeling than worry. They both have great value. And I don't want you to think like, oh, I should try to replace my uncomfortable feeling with a comfortable feeling. I know the more comfortable feelings are more fun. It's often the more complicated feelings where the real richness is. But just remember, it's not the boss of you. It's not the only thing going on. And being able to hear these multiple perspectives of your emotions. So you imagine your emotions are kind of like advisors. And I suspect, most of us have people we go to in our lives, for advice. Should I make this investment? Should I, sell this new product? Should I, whatever? I'm sure there's somebody you go to say, hey, help me think about X.
Yeah.
So imagine your emotions are like that. And You don't need to totally obey them, and you don't need to totally ignore them. You can just go, okay, let me take in that perspective. And I think you'll find that when you do that, you have more agility. You have more ability to move between your feelings, and you don't get so stuck in any one feeling. So just to summarize, take your feelings to the vet.
Okay.
VET.
Got it.
Validate, explore, transform. Okay, so that validate step was, oh, I am feeling this.
Mm-hmm.
The explore step is, oh, that's interesting. I don't know what that's about. And then the transform step is, well, what else am I feeling? What do I want to do next? If you find yourself wrestling in that transform step and you're like, no, I shouldn't, I want to go back, go back, do not collect $200. Do not, right. You just go back and say, let me validate again. Let me really acknowledge that this is what I'm feeling. And it's okay for me to be feeling this.
Uh-huh.
Let me really listen more deeply. What is this about? And I think you'll find that when you do a really good job in the V and E steps, the validate and explore steps, the transform happens by itself.
Okay. Thank you so much for that framework. That was really insightful. I have a question. So if I was a newbie to emotional intelligence, or maybe I'm smack in the middle of it, I know a little bit about it, like what could one expect for their journey of improving their emotional intelligence? Like, is there a end of improving emotional intelligence? I know I'm setting you up here, but I want you to share your thoughts about this journey with our listeners.
I might be a slow learner. I've been working on this full time for 25 years. And I feel like some days I have a handle on it and I'm getting better at it. I will tell you that I was curious about this topic myself, and I did a research study on it. This is what happens when you're a geek like me, an emotions geek, and you're like, oh, great, let's do research. So I got a whole bunch of people who'd been studying emotional intelligence to fill in a survey.
Okay.
We looked at the data, and 3.75 years was about how long on average it took for people to feel like they'd really integrated the skills.
Oh, wow. I had no idea you did that research. I'm so glad I asked this question.
It's a really cool study. And the first step people identify is exactly what you said earlier. We call it the aha. And it's like, oh, my feelings matter.
Mm-hmm.
And if I change my feelings, I change the outcomes. Yep. That's the aha that was really consistent in this research. And I'll share the link with you that people can access it. It's available for free to download the
Absolutely. We'll definitely share it in show notes.
And it's a great summary. But what seems to happen is people start learning this, that start making sense of it, and then they typically get kind of overwhelmed with like, wow, there's too much to work on. And then they come back and go, okay, well, there's too much to work on, but I'm going to pick one thing. And they pick one thing, and then they realize, wow, that one thing, it helps me be more of the person I want to be. And when they feel that call of purpose, and that this work of really developing more awareness and intentionality with your feelings is connected with purpose, that's when they go to the next level of really integrating. At the end of the process, what we saw is that people say they found more peace within themselves. That created more peace around them. They found more authentic acceptance within themselves. They came to be more self-compassionate about who they really are. And when they did that, they were able to connect with who other people really are.
That sounds like a great thing to be a leader. Yeah. I mean, we also didn't even touch on how impactful this is for our interpersonal, relationships, our significant others, our kids. But I mean, could you imagine being so self-confident in your own emotions and you can understand others and have compassion for their emotions and what they're going through? In a sense, like, I'm trying to articulate this. Like I said, my son's 13. So what he knew it seems like he doesn't know at 13 now, right? His hormones are going, his emotions are all over the place. And so because I have struggled through my own journey, it wasn't straight through of my own emotional intelligence. I can have that compassion to say, okay, in context, like, okay, he might be backsliding a little bit, but like, how can I support him in this?
So a few years on, my kids are now 22 and 24.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them in the last few years have said something approximately like, my older kid said, I really tried to resist this whole emotional intelligence thing, but now I'm really seeing value in it. And I'm glad that you made us learn so much about it.
Good. So you're giving me hope for about another 10 years. Great.
Exactly. We did a case with FedEx. And one of the things we did in this case study is we asked a bunch of managers who had gone through the program to share what it did for them. And I was a little bit worried, actually, because what they said, almost all of the responses, some of them were about their work, but most of them were about their personal lives.
Wow.
This saved my marriage. This saved my life. This gave me the tools to really transform and go back to being the person I really wanted to be. And I was worried that the senior managers, when they saw these comments, would say, like, oh, well, we shouldn't be paying for this.
Yeah, right.
And the opposite was true. FedEx at the time had a very strong commitment to what they call people first leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And that means you put people first.
Yeah.
And so when they saw the results, they said, wow, we are doing it. We're doing people first leadership. They also call it the Purple Promise, by investing in people and giving them tools for their lives. And when we give people tools for their lives, they're going to be better and do better. And that's what our data showed.
So this is audio only, but Joshua got to see me wipe away a tear as he's sharing that story. So like my voice is cracking right now. You know, when I hear that, I'm like, that is the real work, right? Like when I hear, similarly, I've had clients come to me and say, like, if I don't get my business under control, like I'm going to be divorced. Like I'm working all the time, right? But it also comes the other way that says, oh my gosh, like my relationships are in such turmoil that it's affecting how I show up at work. And I can imagine that FedEx is saying, hey, like if this has saved people's marriages and lives, like how are they better able to show up and do their work when they're at work? Because we are people first. Like who we are in our personal lives is how we show up at work. And so anything we can do to help both sides, I think is the goal, what we want to do.
I think one of the biggest tragedies of contemporary work is the notion that we're two different people.
I agree.
You know, and even this term work-life balance, as if our work isn't part of our lives.
Yeah.
There's that great scene in You've Got Mail where Meg Ryan's character says, you know, and Tom Hanks's character says, you know, it's not personal, it's just business. And she says, what are you talking about? There's nothing more personal than business. Like, this is how we're spending our lives. There's a concept in Indian tradition called karma boom. And when I was doing some work in India, one of my colleagues shared this with me. And this is like the karma of our work. It's like how our work is part of what we're contributing in the world. Mm-hmm. And I feel that really strongly as an entrepreneur. That like I want my work to actually matter in the world. And that means I want everybody that I'm working with as a client, as an employee, as a colleague, in any way, I want this work to make their lives more complete, more whole. I don't want for myself to like say, yeah, well, I'm that way at work, but I'm not that way at home. Like, that disintegration. It's like the opposite of integrity.
Yeah.
Integrity is when like all of the different parts of us are integral, they're connected. And I think that when we can show up that way, our customers feel it, our potential customers feel it, like people want to work with us. Like it brings so much more strength into what we do on a daily basis.
Absolutely. What a beautiful conversation. And I think that's a great place to end, is that we all want our work to matter. And how do we get to show up our best, both in our personal lives, in our whole lives, because we're saying whole lives, but both personal and professionally. Joshua, how can people find out more about you and the work you do? I know that I will share it in your official bio, but you have several books. You have such a robust set of resources and trainings and workshops. But how would someone find out more about that?
6seconds.org is our website. We officially, it's the number 6 and then the word seconds.org. Although, if you type out SIX, it'll get you there. Don't worry. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can connect with 6 Seconds on all kinds of social media. I would say that one of the things that you might start with is we have a fantastic assessment tool. If you really want to learn about your emotional intelligence, that would be one way for you to do that. My book, At the Heart of Leadership, as a business owner, I think you'll find it a really practical way to start thinking about, well, how does this stuff work in leadership, in my day-to-day leadership, in my leadership of life? But as you said, we have tons of courses. We have free programs that we run all over the world. We have volunteers running what we call EQ cafes, like every week somewhere in the world, now mostly online. So you can join this global community. It's a really rich way to engage and explore and put your toe in. And then we have introductory courses. And we have, I think I said this earlier, but we have everything from these kind of introductory courses all the way through to a doctorate. So you can put your toe in and then go deeper, 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 deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have a special offer for one of your courses, Managing Well-Being. Can you just share a little bit about that? And we'll make sure all the links are in the show notes as well.
So we've been talking a lot about well-being. We've been talking about our energy and how our well-being and our employees' well-being is part of performance. And I think a lot of times people have this false dichotomy where it's like, well, if I can either have well-being or I can have productivity and performance. And actually, we've been kind of talking about this whole show, like that these two things actually reinforce each other. So last year, the US Surgeon General released the Surgeon General's framework for workplace mental health and well-being. And it's awesome. And it doesn't tell you how. It doesn't give you practical, like, okay, here's some things to try out. So we decided to create a course for managers and leaders on what things you can try. What are some tools? And there are 10 different, really practical, actionable, like, okay, here's the thing. And I have a little video where I explain it. And then there's a workbook and you try it out and you do it. And you might not love all 10 of them, but there are, at least a bunch of them you'll find are really useful to you to support your own well-being and your employees' well-being in service of performance.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being such a great guest. And I have truly enjoyed this conversation with you and connecting with you on emotional intelligence and so much more we got to talk about today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Amber. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
I have loved having you listen to this episode of Productivity Straight Talk. And I sure hope you found my conversation with Joshua to be empowering, insightful, but I need to be straight with you. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. I believe that making emotional intelligence a priority is a necessary skill in our business. I also believe it's a necessary skill just to navigate life. For all the other hats we wear, whether we're a spouse, a significant other, we are a parent, an aunt, an uncle, a friend. Emotional intelligence, in my opinion, having this skill set will improve every area of your life. I personally went on my own journey to learn emotional intelligence in my early 20s, and it absolutely changed my life. And I can tell you that it's an ongoing journey. It's not a destination that you reach. It's something that you live out. It's a skill set you use every single day. And some days you show up better than others, but it's the pursuit of understanding how powerful our emotions are, how much they can control our behavior, our action or inaction. And when we use that under the context of our businesses and really specifically around productivity, that's really what we're here for, right? Is to create action, positive action in our businesses to make an impact, or we're looking for ways to not have inaction, not get stuck, frozen, overwhelmed, distracted. Again, emotional intelligence shows up in every area of our lives, and most certainly business and specifically productivity. So my question to you is, what action can you take today to take one step forward in pursuing your own skill set and improvement around emotional intelligence? All right, well, before we close out today, I do want to let you know that fall is coming. For many of us, the fall season feels like a fresh new start, like the beginning of the year of January 1st. Our kids are going back to school. We've just come back from vacation. And I want to let you know that if you are thinking about getting support in your business and working with me via coaching or in my privately or my group coaching program, I would love to talk to you. To do that, I invite you to schedule a discovery call. You can learn more about the discovery call and scheduling that by heading on over to amberdelagarza.com/call. I would love the opportunity to meet with you, find out what your challenges are, what support you're looking for. And if I think that I am the right person that can stand beside you, partner with you, and coach you through those challenges, I would be honored to do so, and I would let you know. Again, you can do that by heading on over to amberdelagarza.com/call. And if you are new here, welcome. Be sure you subscribe anywhere you're listening to this episode of Productivity Straight Talk. And for those of you that have been around for a while, do not keep Productivity Straight Talk a secret. Be sure to share it with a fellow business owner. Send them a text, send them an email. Let them know you're thinking of them and that you enjoyed this episode and you think they will too. So that's my straight talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.